Hello and welcome to My Gardening Journey. I'm John and this is my roundup for 2024. Feels a bit strange saying that we're now about to go into 2025, but that's what it is. I've been doing these videos as roundups for the last few years and they're really helpful for me because it lets me think about what I've been up to over the year, see things that have gone well, things that have not been so good, and start to think about the coming year. Hopefully there's some things in here as well that might help you as you start to think about your garden and maybe start to think about how you can reflect on previous years and how you can improve on them each time they come around. I'm going to start off with something that is not directly garden related but more channel related, and as you know, because you're here watching my video, I run a YouTube channel called My Gardening Journey. And if you've ever done any video work, you know it takes a lot of effort to research, to produce and film and then edit before uploading, and it takes a lot of effort to do that. The channel has done really well and I've seen it grow now to over 1,000 subscribers, and that's a massive thank you to everyone who has been part of that. It's not what I expected and I really appreciate every single one of you. Alongside the channel, I also am running my own My Gardening Journey blog, and I've been on a massive learning curve when it comes to trying to be found by search engines and drive traffic to my blog site, which is My Gardening Journey, and I'll put a link in the description below. And on there I'm going into lots of different subjects now, so I'm really focusing on micro small holdings, so something similar to what I'm doing here at home, but I'm also going to be putting on some growing guides and other bits of information around chickens, quails, so anything that really is attached to what I'm doing here on my videos. You can also find more information there in my blog, so please take the time to follow that link and come across and see what I'm up to. Subscribe there as well because you'll get a newsletter into your email account and you'll be able to see when I'm posting. And the last plug before I move on to garden stuff is come across to my Facebook page, and that's because on there I'm going to be putting out daily hints and tips. I'm going to be putting out what I'm up to, more of the behind the scenes, and this year I'm going to really drive and increase the amount of content I produce that hopefully will be helpful to you. So please subscribe to all of my channels and come along and engage. I'd love to hear from you and I'd love to hear any questions you might have because it really helps me come up with content for all of my channels. With that out of the way, I'm going to start with a bit of a reflection on 2024. Now, I don't know about you, but 2024 for me was a bit of a strange year, particularly from a gardening perspective. It was probably best summed up as warm and wet. Here in the UK, it was neither cold, which had its own problems, but also it didn't get particularly hot as well. And it was just damp most of the year here, which brought on a huge amount of issues for growing last year.
I think this really should have been the year of the slug, because the wet weather did the slug a huge amount of favours, and I really had to change how I was growing in order to accommodate it. Also using some of the space in the greenhouse to keep some younger plants going, because I've had a lot of problems with slugs this year, and the slugs have eaten plants that I've not known them to eat before, which has been some of my tomato plants and my pepper plants. So I'm in the process now of just updating the plants I've got outside. This will be the last time I replace some of the damaged plants because there's not enough growing season left, and then I'll be clearing out that greenhouse. And my God, did it rain! And the rain really got in the way of doing anything.
Come down to London for the first time this year. It's been so wet and horrible, I just haven't really had the inclination or motivation to come down. I've come down today and it's actually not looking too bad. I was expecting it to be a lot worse.
We don't have a huge amount of predators for our chickens, but urban foxes are a big problem for us, and in 2024 we suffered our third fox attack.
So here we go, we've got a couple of new chickens to add to our flock. So we've got 5 now. Unfortunately, one passed away from the original flock after another fox attack, but I've tried to fix what happened there. Despite all of those problems I had last year, there were a number of things that went pretty well in the garden as well. And one of those was kohlrabi. Next up is kohlrabi, which can be sown outside this time of year or indoors. It's of the brassica family, so I suspect I'm going to have to protect it from caterpillars, slugs and snails. So we'll see how well I do with this. Kohlrabi tends to do pretty well when you're sowing directly outside, so that's what I want to try and do for most of the year, but the garden has been really waterlogged, so I'm going to start a few off inside. I've never sown this before, so it'll be really interesting to see how well it goes. It's not a vegetable you tend to see too often in the supermarkets, so it's something that's really interesting to produce yourself and try out. From what I read, this is a vegetable that you want to harvest when it's young. It's when it tastes the best and you can eat it raw. Tend to grate it down, put it into coleslaws or into salad. Because I'll be harvesting young, it means I'll likely need to do multiple sowings throughout the year just to keep a supply going. So I'll start some off now and then I'll be sowing them into the garden later on. So this seed packet comes with, I think it's 500 seeds, so plenty of seeds in there. I'm just going to put a couple into each of the seed stations just to make sure I get at least one good seedling coming through in each station. I'll just cover these over with a small amount of compost and then give it a really good water. As always, make sure you label these. These will go onto my heated propagation bench, and hopefully in about a week to 2 weeks we should start to see some life come through. If you're one of my new subscribers here, you probably joined on the back of some content I've created around chickens, and I'll put a card up on the screen now to take you to the series of different videos I've been making on chicken care. And that's because I've really loved bringing chickens into my garden. They've added a huge amount to what we do here in terms of producing our own food. And this year I also added quail. It's gone 10 o'clock at night and I've got the eggs into the incubator, so hopefully that will be okay overnight, and I'm setting up around about 37.6 degrees and aiming for around about 45% humidity. It's set to turn every 90 minutes, so hopefully that should be enough, and probably in about 17 days, and we'll check at day 7 to see whether or not we've got anything growing inside the eggs. Now, I haven't done a lot of any videos actually on quail this year, and that's because I've really wanted to get to know them, understand them, think about how I'm actually looking after them, so that when I share some content with you on it, I'm coming from a position of being informed. I'm not just telling you things that I've read immediately and haven't tried out. So I'm hoping to bring you some more quail content, or any quail content this year, and hopefully taking that from hatching all the way through to adulthood, because I do want a few more quail. Chicken content has done really well here on the channel this year, and it's brought a lot of subscribers on, so welcome and thank you for joining. And chickens for us has been an amazing journey to have come on over the last, I think now about 4 years that we've had them. And they've added so much to our garden in terms of the food we can produce with them, in terms of their eggs, but also in terms of the manure that we're using now to re-feed our soil. And it's been great having them. They're great company as well. Adding chickens to our garden was one of the best decisions we made. It took growing our own food to a whole new level, and I'm really pleased that we did it. The decision to get chickens was based on 3 things. The first, we wanted to have access to eggs that were absolutely fresh and not from a supermarket. We wanted to make sure that our eggs came from a source that we knew were being looked after and the welfare of the chickens was being maintained. Secondly, I wanted to create an ecosystem within my garden and allotment where I'm taking from the soil but also putting back, and chickens are wonderful for taking scraps and turning that into manure that you can later on use for fertility in your garden.
And finally, we wanted a little bit of company in the garden. It's amazing what a little bit of life and movement does to a garden. It brings it all to life. We had a slight period where we didn't have a chicken flock, and it was horrible. We really missed seeing the chickens pottering around and enjoying themselves. And they provide a huge amount of company to me when I'm out in the garden, and they're never far behind me when I'm digging. We got our first flock back in 2000, and we got them from a bantam breeder. Unfortunately, they've closed down now, but it was a really nice setup with loads and loads of different breeds you could get. And we've not gone back since. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of attacks from foxes, which is the main predator around here, which meant the first flock we had unfortunately didn't make it, and they were lost after about a year or so. We did get a new flock, and again we were hit by another fox attack, and since then I've really upped my game when it comes to predator proofing. But keeping chickens has been something that I've constantly wanted to make sure that we're doing despite those setbacks. And each setback, I hope that I've got a little bit better at looking after my chickens.
Another big win for us in 2024 was raising our own broiler chicks from day-old chicks through to actually processing them. And we have a number of them still in our freezer. I know it sounds a bit weird to raise your own animals, love and care for them and really like them whilst they're alive, and then finally actually kill them and put them into your freezer to eat. But for me, we eat meat anyway, and I really want to have a much better connection to the meat we're eating and to be able to see how they're being treated as they grow. So I really wanted to go through that experience, and it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I didn't share it here on the channel because I really didn't want to go through that in a public domain. I'm quite an introvert, so I really needed to do that myself because I didn't know how I'd feel about it. But this year I'm going to go through it with you. We're going to be raising more chicks, and I'll explain how it felt the first time I went through it because I think it's important to share that with you. Now, looking on to 2025, so what's to come? Well, we are thinking of moving. Our house is currently on the market and we are looking to move somewhere that has more land, and that's because I want to be expanding what we do here. Whilst I love having an allotment, it is a little bit further to have to go to do anything, so I want more space closer to home. And also we want to take on more animals, not just chickens and quail. We'd like to have pigs, potentially some goats, and maybe a couple of cows in there as well. So really a small holding is where we'd like to move to. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to focus on the content for small plots of land. I'll still be doing that as well, but hopefully I'll be able to broaden out what we're doing and take you along for the journey as well. But that does mean that we have to sell this house, and that may not happen, so I also need to think about what I'm going to be doing for here now, because it's January, there's seed we can be sowing, and I don't want to miss out because some plants need a nice long season to get from sowing through to fruiting, and I need to be sowing them now. So I'm going to act as though we're not selling, I'm going to plan as though we're not selling, and if we do, then it will just be a nice surprise. So what does that mean? That means the allotment is going to get a lot more attention this year. I have completely neglected it in 2024, and I'm going to be completely revamping that and trying to drive out as much vegetables from there as I possibly can. So I'm thinking about getting a polytunnel down there, and I'm thinking about all the different root vegetables I can put there and other hardier veg that can go down the allotment and not need so much input from me. Here at home, if we don't move, I will be getting myself a potting shed. As much as I love being in here for videos and for growing, it's a greenhouse, and I really want to be able to grow more things in the greenhouse. So I want a second bed and to remove these the stagings from here, so I've got the space to grow plants in here, but I'll still need a place to sow. In 2025 I also want to really hone in on the practice of producing my own salads and do that as efficiently as I possibly can, so that I've got enough coming through for myself and a few other people that I provide the salads to each year, and to really cut out any need whatsoever of going to the supermarket for it. So that's going to need me to get on top of my sequential sowing and making sure I actually eat what I grow. I was watching a video by, I think it's Jason Rhodes, and in there he said, sow what you eat and eat what you sow. And I think that's going to be my mantra for this coming year, because in the past I've grown things that I actually probably don't like eating just because I've got the seeds and I've got the space, so why not? And I don't think that's the best productive thing to be doing. So this year I'm going to really focus on the foods that I'm going to be eating and then actually eating them. Continuing my approach to having the more sensitive and less robust plants close to home, so like say salads, those sort of plants, tomatoes, peppers, things that need lots of watering and care here in the kitchen garden, as I call it. I think that's more robust and doesn't require constant tendering will go down the allotment, because I'm probably only going to be able to get there potentially twice a week at the most, so I don't really want to be putting anything down there that needs me to be there every single day. In 2025 we will be raising some more broiler chicks. Like I said earlier on in the video, we will be doing that with you. We'll be taking you through that so you can see how we're taking them from day old, so potentially if we can and it works out, we might even hatch them here, all the way through to when we process. Well, we can't show you processing because of the YouTube rules, but hopefully we'll take you through there. So you can see that even on a small plot of land, you can raise your own meat. In 2025, I really want to focus on more self-sufficiency. Like I said earlier, I want to sow what I eat and eat what I sow, but I also want to look at other ways that I can take myself out of the supply chain as much as possible. So I'm thinking about brewing and how that can be done at home and share some of that journey with you as well, but also things like bread making and starting to think about how I can preserve the fruit and the vegetables and salads that I produce at home so that I can enjoy them throughout the year, not just in a few months of the year. Like I said, this video is really for me to look back on the year I've just had, the successes, the things that didn't go quite so well, but also think about going into 2025. Hopefully some of it has been helpful for you and given you a little of a taste of what is to come across this next year. Like I say, I'm hoping to increase the amount of content I'm producing here on my channel, on my blog and on Facebook as well, so please come along onto those different channels. Please engage. Put down in the comments the things that you'd love to hear about in this coming year, and I'll see you next time.